Hey guys, today we get to talk about ultralight backpacks. I'm going to tell you about 3 great packs that I've had experience with: the Zpacks Arc Blast, HMG's Windrider, and the Divide pack by Seek Outside. I'll compare and contrast and all the usual stuff, but before we get into all that, take a look around. This is the front range of the Rocky Mountains on the eastern edge of the Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana. If you add in the Great Bear and the Scapegoat wildernesses, this creates the largest roadless area in the lower 48 states, and it's known as the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex, which is a bit of a mouthful, and that's probably why most people just refer to it as the Bob. If you're interested in seeing more of this trip, I'll make a link. I made a short video of this overnight trip so you can see more of this beautiful country. Hey guys, I'm Dan, and these videos are all about helping you to transition to ultralight backpacking so that you can get out and explore places like this. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and thanks for coming along today. So this is the Zpacks Arc Blast. It is a 55-liter pack, and it is made out of DCF, so virtually waterproof. That it helps that it has a roll top closure, kind of like a dry bag. It wouldn't keep your stuff dry if you took a dunk in a deep river, but generally it does work to keep things dry so that you really don't need to bring along an extra rain cover, and that's a nice feature to not have to worry about. The rating of 55 liters includes all of the volume. I don't know how they calculate that, but all the volume of the extra mesh and also the side pockets. So the actual main body is 45 liters. Now when I first got into ultralight backpacking, I was worried that that wouldn't be big enough. But actually a lot of the ultralight gear is not just light, it's also small. And so by condensing it, I found that this 45-liter pack is plenty. In fact, it's probably bigger than I need most of the time. So the Arc Blast is a frame pack, as I said, and the frame is formed by these 2 bars on the sides. And as you can see, you tighten it down like that and tighten these strings, and that creates this arc. Now the selling point for that is that that allows some airspace along the back to reduce perspiration. So I found that that actually isn't very effective. My back usually pushes against this anyway, right through that mesh, and I'm usually right up against the material regardless, so it doesn't really work the way that it's built to reduce stress, at least for me, although there does seem to be a bit of a comfort factor involved when I make the arc, so I still do that. However, another drawback of that is that creating the arc pushes into the space of the main body, so that kind of reduces the space available, and you really want to form that arc before you load the pack, because it can be pretty tough to do otherwise. And the Arc Blast, like most of Zpacks stuff, is very minimalist design, so you can see that there's strings in most places where a heavier pack would probably have some webbing, and most of it, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. The one part that I didn't like was that the clasps were so small. Here you can see on the roll top closure, it's just like a 1/2-inch clasp, and that seemed just a little too delicate for me. This top clasp, I managed to break it pretty early on by cinching down tightly to get the top of the load down. Now for me, that's an area that I think you want something a little more beefy, especially if you did have your tent or something on top. You really want to be able to cinch it down tight and make sure it's going to stay there. So when I broke that, I don't know if Zpacks would have done something to help me to fix that, but I didn't even bother contacting them because I just added my own webbing from cannibalized from a different pack, and then I got my beefier clasp in the area that I thought it really needed it. So one thing you'll notice about the Arc Blast is that I've removed the sternum strap, and that's just personal preference. I remember Ray Jardine talked about how the sternum strap restricted the breathing. Personally, I don't think that's really an issue, but I've learned that sternum straps seem to cause pain in my shoulders about the morning of day 3. And so I've removed them from all of my packs just because, for me, they're non-functional. There's a slight weight savings, but it's probably only an ounce or so. So that isn't really the main reason. It's more just because I don't use them. And like all ultralight backpacks, this pack doesn't come with any pockets, so these are added on later from other manufacturers. The Zpacks Arc Blast has kind of an effective weight range of around 18 to 20 pounds. So what that means is if you have your base pack weight really dialed in, down around 10 or 12 pounds, then this can work for you. Now if you calculate, I usually add 2 pounds of food per day, and the water bottles that I carry weigh 4 pounds. So I only get about 3 days with this pack before I'm pushing that weight limit. Above 20 pounds, it really gets uncomfortable pretty quick. So if you're someone who doesn't mind babying a rather delicate pack, and if you are able to keep your weight that low, and typically only go for 2 or 3 nights tops for most of your trips, then this could be a really great pack for you. At 20 ounces for a frame, that's hard to beat. In one of the earlier videos, I mentioned that I like to sell the gear that I didn't decide to keep or use, and sell that on the gear swap, and then put that money towards the next gear. You'll notice I haven't sold this, and that's because I still like it, and I like to use it when I go for overnights or a 2-night trip. Just when I still feel like playing around with getting as light as possible, it's a good pack for that. This is the Hyperlight Mountain Gear 3400, and I'm going to call it a Windrider because I have to call it something. I'll explain that in a second. The 3400 number is cubic inches, so just to compare apples to apples, that translates to 55 liters, which is the same carrying capacity as the Arc Blast. This pack weighs 32 ounces, and it's made of DCF, so virtually waterproof, just like the Arc Blast. Both packs have a port for the hose of the water bladder to come out, so that makes them not completely waterproof, but you certainly could hike all day in a driving rain and not have to worry about your gear or have to bring along a rain cover, so that's a nice feature. This is the white, which is 50 denier DCF. The pack also comes in a black option, and that's 150 DCF, or denier DCF, which adds 3 ounces and $20 to the pack. Now, I've had this for quite a while. I've put probably over 300 miles on this pack, and I really haven't seen any signs of wear or holes in the material, so I really think that the 150 is probably overkill for the pack. However, the black color certainly would be nice to not show the trail dirt so much. This pack is actually a custom job because, just to explain why I'm calling it a Windrider, the Windrider actually is a version that is all mesh on the front pocket and side pockets, and there's another version called the Southwest that is solid pockets all the way around, with the idea that the solid pockets protect you better from getting snagged on things if you have to do some bushwhacking. Now, when I was making this video or getting ready to make it, I expected to be saying that HMG should really be paying attention to the feedback from the customers and offer this as a standard option, because for me, this is the best configuration. I like having the protection on the side pockets, but I prefer to be able to see what's in that front pocket and not have to dig around in there. And it's also nice to be able to have a place to store wet gear, especially if your tarp is full of condensation in the morning. Well, lo and behold, HMG read my mind, and now they are offering this as a standard option. They're calling it the Junction pack because it is the junction between the Southwest and the Windrider. Some of the biggest differences between this pack and the Arc Blast, first is that the mesh on the HMG pack is a lot stouter. It's going to hold up to a lot more abuse. One of the things that you see in long-term reviews of the Arc Blast is that people typically complain about getting holes in that mesh material. So that's an important feature. And also the Arc Blast is a 50 denier material all around, whereas the HMG pack switches to 150 for the bottom. And it just makes good sense to have a stouter material on the bottom of the pack when you're setting it down in the woods. Nice to have that protection. Probably the biggest difference though is the carrying. The HMG pack, or sorry, the Arc Blast, you remember, technically is an external frame pack. The HMG pack is an internal frame that has aluminum stays that fit down into internal pockets, and there is a 1/4 inch foam back pad in this area here to protect your back from anything being pokey inside of the pack bag. Now, when I just saw these two packs online in pictures, I would have guessed that the Arc Blast would be way more comfortable and this would be a sweaty nightmare, but in reality, I found this to be just fine. I haven't sweat more than I do with carrying the Arc Blast, so that's not really the problem that I would have guessed it would be. A third major difference is that the HMG pack comes with this V strap that goes over the top, which is a really nice feature for securing items on the top. If you want to store your tent there when you're on a longer trip and the pack bag is full of extra food, or if you are somewhere where you have to carry a bare canister, it's really nice to have that V-strap. It holds it a lot more securely than a single strap over the top. And also there's these side compression straps that are different from the Arc Blast. The Arc Blast just connects the roll top on the top, and you can do that with the HMG pack, but you can also go on the side, which for me is nice to be able to cinch that down and just keeps the stuff inside the pack from shifting around when I'm hiking. Interestingly enough, the Zpacks website is now offering both of those as add-on options. You can get a V-strap over the top and side compression straps for the Arc Blast. However, each one of those add-ons does cost $10, so that's a factor to keep in mind. Now, I was very fortunate to score this pack used on Gear Swap, and as an older model pack, it didn't have any of the hip belt pockets with it, like most ultralight backpacks, and the current model does offer sewn-in hip belt pockets. I think they've been through 2 iterations of that. The first one, people complained that it wasn't big enough, but it seems like the reviews of the current model say it is a good size of hip belt pocket. Now, there's pros and cons of having a sewn-in hip belt pocket. So when I was looking for hip belt pockets, I went through a lot of different manufacturers trying to find the one that would work for me. So I ended up buying probably 4 different pairs of hip belt pockets, and I was really wishing that the manufacturer would have just had that as a standard feature. On the other hand, when I was researching for this video, I came across another video by Follow Bigfoot in which he was talking about this same pack. And for him, he had the newer model with the sewn-in pockets, and a chipmunk had gotten into the pocket and chewed a big hole in it. So that was a problem because you can't replace the pocket and you can't replace the hip belt. So I'm not quite sure how he solved that ultimately. But I should add that HMG does offer the custom option of getting it without their sewn-in hip belt pockets if that's something that really concerns you. So I have a hard time coming up with cons for this pack because I like it so much. But one con certainly is that it does weigh more than the Arc Blast. After you add on the pockets on the Arc Blast, each one of those additional add-ons typically adds about an ounce to the weight of the Arc Blast. So this ends up being about 8 ounces heavier than the Arc Blast. Second is that there are no load lifters on this pack. That's kind of an interesting point though, because even though my Arc Blast does have load lifters, there's not much material above where the shoulder straps attach. So the load lifters attach right here, and they don't really work the way load lifters are supposed to. They just cinch the pack tighter to your back. They pull straight back instead of lifting. It's supposed to attach higher and lift the shoulder straps up off your shoulders. So it's kind of a wash for me to not have load lifters on the HMG pack. Also, there is a bladder pocket inside, but it's pretty useless, so I keep thinking I should snip that out of there. So overall, the Windrider costs $345 versus the Arc Blast being $325. But when you start adding on all those extras on the Arc Blast, each one of those costs money. So just the hip belts alone are $29 each. So pretty quickly the Arc Blast actually gets to be more expensive than the Windrider. Now the Windrider comes, and the Junction and all of the packs at HMG come in 3 sizes. The 2400, this is the 3400, and there's the 4400. And the 2400 is worth considering if you are able to really condense your gear pretty small. I think I probably could get away with the 2400 now. However, typically you would only want that if you only go on shorter trips, like 2 to 4 days, because when you do start adding in the extra food for a longer trip, it's one nice thing about the 3400 is it's got a lot of extra room with this collar that you can add you have the space for the extra food. So that's a nice feature. And you only save a few ounces with the 2400. So personally, I think the 34 is the way to go. For me, this is the Goldilocks pack. It does everything just right. It's comfortable, it's durable. It might seem like a lot of money, but as I said, I've used this quite a bit already and haven't seen anywhere. So I really expect this to last a good long time and be worth that investment. Now, as I mentioned, when I was looking into making this video, I came across videos that were made by both Follow Bigfoot and Dixie at Homemade Wanderlust. Both of them make a lot of videos about backpacking, and I usually agree with most stuff they say. And both of them were comparing these exact 2 packs, the Arc Blast and the HMG Windrider, and both of them ended up on the side of the Arc Blast being the choice that they preferred. So I'm a little nervous about going against their viewpoints, but Dixie did make a good point that really packs come down to personal preference. There's a handful of really good packs, but between those packs, it's really up to you to decide what you prefer. If you are someone for whom weight is the most important factor, the Arc Blast is probably the best way to go for you because it is lighter. However, if you're someone like me who is kind of on that lower end of the lightweight hiker scale and flirting with ultralight, you're probably going to be happier with the carrying ability of the HMG pack. Now the Windrider does have a functional total pack weight of around 30 pounds, give or take a few pounds. And that works good for a week or 10 days even. But there are times when I need to carry a heavier load. Why would I need to carry a heavier load? Well, sometimes I like to go packrafting. I find it absolutely amazing how they're able to engineer a boat that is both lightweight enough for us to carry on a backpack, but also has all of the robustness necessary to be able to bounce off rocks in wild rivers in the backcountry. Still, by the time I've added in my paddle and PFD and all of the extra clothes necessary to be able to sit in cold water for hours, that adds about 12 to 14 pounds to my total pack weight. I've tried to pack all that gear into the HMG 3400, but there just isn't enough volume to carry all that. I could size up to the 4400 series, and certainly many people do that. The Porter is especially popular as a pack for carrying packraft gear, but it has basically the same harness as the 3400 and 2400 series, which is good up to 30 or 34 pounds about. But when you get up to 40 pounds and even over that, that seems to me to be stretching the capability of that particular harness. My old Osprey pack had a great harness and hip belt, but it weighed 5 pounds. And when I went to look for it to be able to show it to you, I remembered that I actually donated it to the Salvation Army because I was so certain I would never need it again. What I really wanted was something with that level of great carrying ability, but still was relatively lightweight otherwise. So that brings us to the Seek Outside Divide pack. Now, Seek Outside is not quite as well known a company as Zpacks and HMG, but it fills that gap between the heavy traditional packs with the great carrying ability, but otherwise uses lightweight materials. This pack is made with X-Pack, which is similarly waterproof like DCF, a little bit heavier, but it's a lot more durable. And instead of being simply built, the Divide pack has lots of extras. So there are load lifters that work like load lifters are supposed to. They see how it attaches up higher than the shoulder strap. And there is the V-strap over the top, the side compression straps, and it has these lower straps which are perfect for attaching the pack raft. Now, it also has this stay mid-back that helps prevent barreling from the gear that's inside the pack bag. Everything about this pack is basically overbuilt, which has pros and cons, certainly. It's basically the opposite mindset of Zpacks. Zpacks assumes that you're going to be careful with your gear and treat it gently. I think that Seek Outside, the folks there figure that you're going to be dead tired from carrying your pack and drop it on the ground with 45 pounds in it, or maybe roll it off a cliff or something. So it's got the old style metal true external frame pack and extra wide webbing, and there's even metal attachments on most of the attachment points. There are these, they call them bachelor buckles, that can be both cinched and hooked on. The torso length is adjustable. The pack bag slides up and down on the frame, and you can even get 2-inch extensions if you have a longer torso or a taller person. The volume of this pack is 4,500 cubic inches, which translates to about 45 liters, which is huge. That's totally tons of space necessary for all of the packraft gear. The weight is a little more complicated to report to you. The gray material that I have here is a little bit lighter. There is an olive material option that's a bit heavier, and there's a lot of extras that can be removed, all of those things I just listed. So the gray without all the extras weighs 2 pounds 12 ounces, and the range is up to the olive with everything attached is 3 pounds and 6 ounces. My particular configuration here, the gray with all the extras attached, because I need those for pack rafting, weighs 3 pounds and 1 ounce. Now that might sound like a lot, but at the light end of that range, that's just 4.5 ounces more than the HMG 4400, but it's a little bit more volume and a much more comfortable carrying capability. Just a few quibbles that I do have with the Divide pack. First is these bachelor buckles. I'm actually not so crazy about them. I thought maybe it would work to cinch that up and then just hook and unhook and not have to cinch every time, but it doesn't work that way, and I find that to be a little extra fiddly. They are metal, so I wouldn't mind if there was just a regular plastic ladder attachment like on a standard pack. Also, I'm not crazy about the way that it attaches to this front pocket. I wish there was an attachment point right here, because sometimes that gets in the way of being able to access things in that front pocket. Also, another thing is that the hip belt, because it is so wide and comfy, that actually makes it kind of difficult to find hip belt pockets that fit. Now, there are pockets offered on the Seek Outside website, but those are enormous too. They're pictured as being large enough to hold 2 soda cans in there. So that's a bit of a challenge. And since I personally hike most of my time in grizzly country, I've had to kind of do my own thing to manufacture a hip belt holster for the bear spray. But if you pack raft, if you backcountry hunt, if you winter camp and use extra ski gear, this is a great option for anybody that needs to carry extra weight. Now, I wish I could say that this was a cheaper option, but unfortunately it's $349 as the standard configuration, and so by the time you add in the hip belt pockets, it gets to be about the same price as the 4400 series on HMG. So that's why I did want to mention one pack that I've actually never seen myself in person, and that is the ULA Circuit. Both the Circuit and the Ohm are certainly worth looking at. They are a little bit heavier and not waterproof materials, so then you have to probably think about bringing a rain cover, but they are $100 cheaper, and they are certainly very popular. There's a lot of wonderful reviews written, especially about the Circuit, and a lot of people really like that pack. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that for people who happen to be on a budget. All right, that's it for now. If you like these videos and would like me to make more, please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. See you next time.